Today we have another young Indian with us, though he doesn't live in India at the moment, as part of the Voice of the Young series. Hello, everyone. Good to be with you once again. Today we have Anirudh Bhardwaj. Let's listen to him. Over to you, Anirudh.
Well, hello, Dr. Mathur. Thank you so much for having me here. I think I've been following your work since your book, Path to Prosperity for India, and I think it was super nice of you to include me in like something so good that you were planning on doing. So yeah, I mean, I currently live in Paris. I mostly grew up in the city of Ahmedabad in Gujarat back in India, and did my education in Christ University in Bangalore, and then came to do my economics research masters here at Sciences Po in Paris, and currently working at the Paris School of Economics as a researcher in one of their labs called the Finance for Development. And super excited to speak to you today.
Okay, let's go.
Perfect.
So how come you went to Bangalore from Ahmedabad?
Right. I think it was a mixture of a lot of factors that came into play. I think I would blame a lack of proper knowledge, to be very honest, to like take up something that became like a hindrance later on to like what I wanted to do. So I did my education in like science and economics in my 11th and 12th grade. And I've been super interested in economics since I think I was in my 7th or 8th grade. And I've been reading. At that time I'd been reading a lot about like how important it was to have like a multidisciplinary approach to like economics in general. But to be very honest, I didn't have anybody at that time to tell me about how the path towards the discipline also means that you need like very stringent mathematical background as well. So I mean, it was my personal choice that I wanted to like have like a liberal studies education and then sort of focus on the core discipline of economics. And so that's why I went to Christ University to do my bachelor's in economics, political science, and sociology. So like
Wow.
a
Yeah.
mixed liberal arts program. So
Yeah.
it gave me a lot. It gave me a lot to think about. It gave me a lot to like study. But very soon I'd realized that,
Wait, stop. I
yeah,
want to hear about your experience, culture shock, no culture shock. What was
of
it like?
course.
Tell us about it.
I mean, yeah. So I would say from a cultural shock perspective, I was lucky enough to like not feel a lot of it because technically I'm a Kannadiga. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like going back to Karnataka,
Okay.
and so I mean, it was very easy to like gel in with everything
Okay.
and
Okay.
the home bias.
Yeah.
So cultural shock wasn't the most prominent, I would say. I think what changed a lot was the kind of environment that I was in now, because now, I mean, as I came from like a science with economics background, most of my classmates went to do their engineering programs from IITs,
Mhm.
VIT, everywhere around the world. I was suddenly in a place where there was a lot of discussion, deliberation, a lot of exchange of ideas, people who came from very, very different backgrounds. I think I was in a very homogenous socioeconomic background sort of a space back in Ahmedabad. And I think this was the first time where it changed a bit. And I think I would say when I came to Paris, it changed even more.
Right.
Yeah, so it was
You
like a journey of
yeah, you grow up when you go to college. Till then, you are
absolutely,
under your parents and family and teachers who are in India very strict. So
absolutely.
you don't go, in college, they don't care what you do.
Absolutely. And I think it's like an increase of like the safe space that like sort of changes. Like when you go to Bangalore, you're still in like a bubble of like, being in your country, being with your countrymen. But when you just go abroad, like it's a whole new ball game altogether. You
Yeah.
slowly start realizing that you have good support, you're getting a fantastic education, great peers, but at the same time, like every single system here is against you, and you need
Yeah.
to like figure out everything, right from like your health insurances to your visas to like jobs, and just like while studying and like doing however rigorous your program is. So I think that was a very big learning curve.
So why did you think of going to this place? I mean, Sorbonne is very famous,
Yeah.
but why did you think of it? I mean, usually people think of UK, USA, Australia. So what
Right.
is this about Sorbonne.
Going to Sciences and sort of studying from there. Yeah. I think I've been, it's a frequent question that I get a lot, because the thing is, while I was applying for my graduate school, I had realized that I had to do a stringent research masters, because like, I mean, I'm sure you know, like, let's say, if you take an example of any institute in like Oxford, they would give like a lot of economics degrees per se. Like they would have like an MSc in econometrics and mathematical economics, something in research, something in philosophy. But I knew that to sort of transition into a very strong PhD program, I needed to have a research master's. So that was the first thing in my mind. Secondly, I think there were cost barriers for me to go to the US, especially like a couple of colleges I was very, very interested in going, and having worked in like many places back in India, places like IIM Ahmedabad, the Center for Civil Society. I had my supervisors like really pushing me to like go to these places. I couldn't, unfortunately, like figure out those finances. But at the end of the day, there were some colleges in the UK and some colleges like other places which traditionally you don't know them very well in India. But if you look at like econ rankings, the departments, as well as the kind of beautiful research that comes from these departments, we don't know of them a lot. Like Sciences Po being one of them, be that the Toulouse School of Economics, Bocconi in Italy, or Barcelona Graduate School of Economics. They're all,
By the way, I have young people in all of these places.
literally, no, exactly. They're like stellar institutes.
Yeah.
And I mean, in India, we don't usually know like a lot about them.
Yeah.
And plus, given the fact that the class cohort in this particular university was going to be like super small.
Yeah.
And last and very least, which was the most important thing for me, was that with my background in my undergrad, given that I did not take a lot of quantitative courses, there were literally, I think, 2 or 3 very, very good programs in the world that would take me for a research master's program.
Yes.
Like I remember writing to Oxford's, like the Oxford's admissions committee, given like all of my courses that I'd undertaken in my undergrad, and I was asking them like, will I be considered for like the MPhil program in economics,
Yeah.
because that's all I want to do. And it was a very strict no. They said that, we really encourage you to go for the economics for development or philosophy program, but the research MPhil is something that's out. So I think considering all of those things, I had like a couple of places, and Sciences Po made the best sense. And it's super interdisciplinary, like very good, very growing department.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I sort of
And they gave you some money.
yeah. And like when I came over here, I got like a residential scholarship as well. So that really helped me. And just like the support system that I sort of got, even in like the place where I stay right now, that ended up becoming like very important for all of my growth in the last couple of years.
Are you almost done, or you are done?
Yeah, I'm completely done. Like I defended my master thesis in May. So with like the research program, there is a mandatory like thesis component which we have to work with our professor, defend it in the end. And I graduated, I think, last month. So starting from this month, as I said earlier, that I started working at the Paris School of Economics. There is a think tank based out of PSC. It's called the Finance for Development Lab.
Yeah.
And they do like extensive work on sovereign debt, climate financing, and to sort of talk to like other voices in the South, countries from the South, which sort of face like these issues, and sort of to build the way forward. So it was very much related to what I worked on in my thesis as well, and doing that for now.
So can you tell us about your thesis? It's interesting.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, tell us.
Of course. So essentially, what my thesis was titled "The Dragon's Debt" and the impact of macroeconomic loans of China to debtor nations.
Yeah.
So I think the idea began sometime in January, when very fortunately I had met a PhD student here in my university who worked at the World Bank's chief economist's office, Dr. Carmen Balhart's office. I think she was replaced by Dr. Indermeet Gill right now.
Yes.
And, so he was working on a project with her on the history of sovereign debt.
Yes.
And I had gotten together on that project because of him, and so I was working with like 5-6 other people based out of Harvard Kennedy.
Yeah.
And it was during that process where I read up a lot about like Chinese loans, and about how they have become like one of the biggest, not one, I think they are the biggest official lender in the world right now.
Yes.
And a very divided opinion that China is undertaking like something which is like neo-colonialist in nature. They like, entrap nation. There is like a debt trap policy. And whereas a lot of other scholars feel that that is not really the case. So I'd gotten very intrigued about it. Like, why is it happening and how does it work? What would be the macro impacts? And that's what led me to like work on my thesis. So I used a very newly made panel data set by Dr. Reinhardt and like her co-authors. And I end up finding from my preliminary studies, I think there's a lot more to be worked on in that thesis as well, that China ends up behaving like any other creditor for that matter. They end up getting like surplus amount of money which they generate through their economic activities, and they end up parking it in like places which need financing in the first place. And they act like any other creditors for that matter. It's just that these nations end up like taking a lot of money at a time where there is not a lot of financial intermediation present in the country. So it really doesn't trickle down, plus other institutional issues that come into play, which really does not lead to like a lot of investment. So there's an increase in savings, what I find, but not a lot of investments. So to really like kickstart like the process of development in these countries through loans from abroad, what they need is to like develop their internal financial systems, as well as just focus on investments in the first place. And that was really insightful, and that led to me working for what I'm doing right now, which is climate financing and in the nexus of sovereign debt.
Okay, let's talk about climate finance.
Yeah.
Let's see what you have to say.
Right. I think again, I am definitely no like expert in the scene, but like something that I'm working on right now and would want to do that in the future also is again, during the process of working in my thesis, I realized that, I mean, everywhere around the world, including like, let's say the World Bank changing like its agenda to like sort of start funding more climate related projects, the fundamental issue that always comes into fore is that countries' public debt statistics are like, sorry, their public sheets, balance sheets are extremely stressed because of COVID, because of the war in Ukraine, and like a bunch of other macroeconomic shocks that they've been facing. But at the same time, you cannot delay on climate financing anymore at all. So even though they are heavily indebted, how do you find ways through which you can finance their climate transition, but at the same time ensure that their short-term financing needs are also met? So it's like the from what I remember, like reading, especially with the new summit for new finance for development happening here in Paris, like nations would lead like more than like $2 trillion in the upcoming 2-3 decades, and it's more than like almost 50% of it is going to come from the private sector. So like, how do you unlock those things? And I think also getting very interested recently in how do you like raise funds, like how do you like channel them, and what kind of things that you do. So very brief ideas, but like I think I'm very interested.
Now, in climate, are you talking mainly mitigation, or there's also funds for adaptation?
Right, I think both of them. For instance, the one of the projects that I'm working on right now for the former chief economist of the World Bank for the MENA region. So he wants to look at different countries' short-term financing needs, who are basically have defaulted or are under like the process of defaulting, and to build like a case for climate for debt swaps. So in that scenario, we are looking at their climate financing needs from a mitigation and adaptation perspective, as well as to see like how things change from a country to country perspective. And I think that has been the most interesting aspect of my journey.
Which are these countries?
Right. So I think the 5 countries that we're looking at right now are Pakistan, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Egypt, and Argentina. So something that like covers a lot of regions. And all of their needs are
all of the hard cases. This is I mean, South Africa is so heavily into coal, and yet they are dead broke. So fixing South Africa is, I think, today one of the hardest.
Absolutely. Like their public sector entity called, I think it's ESCOM.
So, I know ESCOM.
So ESCOM, and they're heavily indebted. So I think as a young professional, like just starting out in like these spaces, that has been the most interesting part for me, that this is a climate issue, something that we are all sort of facing together, but the problems, developmental challenges are supremely acute. So how these issues change from one country to another it has been like absolutely mind-boggling. Like you were just talking about South Africa, but at the same time, you go to Argentina, they
Yeah.
have like the largest reserves of like
Yes.
shale oil and shale gas, but they they can't like start mining it at this point of time due to like lack of capacity or whatever it is, given their climate needs also. So, but at the same time, they also have some of the largest lithium deposits, which could be
Yes.
used for their like EV vehicles transition.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
thinking a lot about like what is there, what is not, and sort of trying to
Okay.
make it very
Any
interesting.
any knowledge you have about Sri Lanka that you might share with us out of all this?
Sri Lanka was, I think, something that I've been recently been working on. I think their biggest issues, from what I could understand, was the way their institutions sort of played out, and also especially the fact that they'd undertaken a lot of they'd taken like a lot of financing from abroad for projects that were heavily contested in the first place. I mean, if I remember reading it correctly, the Hambantota port, which came into like a lot of flack recently,
Yeah.
there were many public sector leaders who were already discussing that why are you investing in like another port when like you have so many ports. I think one in Colombo is like so nearby.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that I think people keep on saying again and again, especially in the MDB circle, that
Yeah.
fiscal consolid like fiscal austerity ends up becoming super important, and
Yeah. Okay.
countries managing them at the end, I think it really needs to be focused on. And I think from all the basic ideas as well as what I've read in like the last couple of years, I think we as citizens should like really hold our governments accountable for the public debt that they're taking.
Okay.
uh, Even let's say in our country, in India,
Hmm.
there's lots of like freebies that are being given. So like I think the common people needs to hold everybody accountable, that okay,
Yeah. Okay. But
every
let me ask you two questions. Well, one question really. I think out of these five,
Hmm.
Sri Lanka is the most fixable. I think it's my
Hmm.
assessment. Uh, do you have any thoughts about which is, because Argentina is perpetual defaulter.
Yeah.
You can't get away from that. And
So is Pakistan, very sadly.
well, Pakistan's not a defaulter, but they are always on the brink.
At the brink,
They're
exactly.
on
So
the
like
brink.
even they just got another financing released
Yeah,
from the
they are
IMF.
they are brinkmanship. They are experts at it. Okay.
Literally.
But is Sri Lanka really the most fixable in these? And do you think, and let's be blunt about this, do you think that, forget the IMF, because IMF is not a curative institution.
Yeah,
They
it's
are
like a
just
surgeon.
emergency support. Okay, you are
True,
dying. Okay, I'll give you something. Okay, fine.
truly, truly.
We know what IMF is. But do you think really that the World Bank policies can really bring them out of this terrible situation, or there are too many factors that the World Bank cannot overcome? It's a very tough question. I just ask your opinion.
Right. Again, I would really want to tell you and your viewers, definitely not an expert in this.
Yeah. Nobody is an
All
expert.
From all the things that I think I've read, I think I've been very fortunate enough to have like talks and discussions with like some people who have been like my academic heroes for the longest time, like my supervisors. I very recently met the executive director for Africa, like and a bunch of other people who have been like asking questions about this, and I think that's where I get my thought process from.
Okay, good. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So I think the biggest issue is the ability of these spaces to handle climate related issues, because they're heavily like politicized. They heavily like, for instance, for the longest time, SDR channeling has been the biggest issue in the forefront of the IMF, where a lot of countries have a lot of like IMF SDRs that are like given to them as quotas, which could be used to like finance like all of these spaces, but it has not been happening because of a lot of reasons, mainly political, that have come into the foray. And my supervisor also very recently wrote a paper on how the world needs a multilateral development bank that is just focused on climate. And I think I really subscribe to that as well, because having like a space that's purely looking into the financing, like climate financing needs, and which goes above and beyond from all of these Bretton Woods institutions which existed to actually fulfill a very different mandate. And
Yeah.
to give them some credit, I think they have done a great job in some spaces and they are heavily contested in others. For instance, you were very rightly talking about the IMF. Like, they give temporary relief. One of my supervisors from last year, he worked at the IMF's restructuring teams for a while. So he used to just tell us one of the things that people usually think that it's a fix for something, but what people don't understand, what we do as the IMF teams, is that we are surgeons.
Yeah.
Like, we come into it not to tell you that, oh, you have fever, take
Yeah.
these medicines, you'll be okay. No, we tell you to chop this arm off, do this thing, do that thing, and that's how, like, your country is going to come back on
You will
track.
be
So
half dead, but you will recover.
you will be floating, you will be alive, you will be breathing.
Yeah.
Supremely necessary from, again, the things that I have read and I've understood. And I've always believed that I need to, like, be always open to other opinions, but from
Yeah.
what I understand, very important. So either there's a need to, like, shift the mandate very heavily, and that has to come from a governance perspective, or to have something entirely new, which my supervisors emulate. And I think there is a lot of thoughts on that also.
Wonderful. There's a lot of thinking going on with you, a lot of analysis, a lot of thinking.
And I'm very interested in, like, understanding, not just from a research perspective, but I think I've been getting very interested in understanding how will you undertake this financing, like how will you raise funds, like who will you talk to? Because if it is private investors, I think you might have read about like Dr. Avinash Persad. He's
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
the
I know.
special climate envoy to Barbados.
Yes.
So he had, like, a very recent paper on how to unlock green transformation in countries, and how, you have to manage foreign exchange needs. So these are, like, very structural finance issues that would come into play. It's very easy to say that, oh, countries need like 1 trillion worth of, like, financing from private institutions. How do you do it? Where do you do it? Who gets this money? How do you put it? And how do you ensure that people in the middle are not affected? And I think that is like the challenge for all of us going in the future. And I would love to be an integral part of it, and we'll see how life goes.
Okay, that's something, but you have told us a lot and you understood a lot. I'm glad to hear from you that, you're
Just a function of all the great people I've
well, but
got to have around me.
you obviously need to be with them, but then you need to get there and you need to work for them, because they throw you out if you don't do the work.
Hopefully,
And there are many people who would like to be in your place, and so obviously you have to perform. If you don't perform, nobody wants you. Okay, anything else you want to add?
Just like ending thoughts, I would say the journey till now, again, it's like it's nowhere even like near like a milestone, or near like something that has to end. Long way ahead.
Yeah.
But at least I think the journey since I was in my high school until now has been very different, very rocky. Like in the sense that I have been supremely privileged to be in like this place in the first place.
Yes.
But a tiny note to, like, especially the people who like are going abroad also, that more than your university, your brands, your course is the most important thing that matters. But also, like, be mentally prepared that there are going to be structural challenges, right, from your visa issues to like jobs to like everything that will work against you. So just like be prepared and do what you can best.
So how did you overcome those challenges?
I haven't. I'm actually going through it. I'm still going through it. I'll be very honest.
Okay. So
But it's. I think it's always the help of friends and people. And I'm a very big believer of this, that you end up getting help from people who you never expected to like get it from you. The world helps you in like weird ways. So for instance, when I was getting like a residential scholarship, a private equity company was sponsoring my stay, and through them I got a mentor who's basically one of like a very senior manager in like their investor relations team. So he has been very pivotal in like helping me out with like everything that he can, connecting me to people that he knows. And like just, so it's like he was somebody who I would never think that would be somebody who's like so pivotal to like my journey here. Friends, and they're all super nice, but I think getting from everywhere would be
all right. Well, that's great. Mark it in your calendar. I want to talk to you after 1 year.
I hope so, that I would have nicer things to say as well.
Oh, who knows? So I can't do calendars, but you can. put it in your calendar and ask me in 1 year
Absolutely.
later, are you still interested in me? Let's hope
I would not. I would obviously like, please let
yeah.
me know whenever
You
you.
no, you write it down in your calendar that
Absolutely.
you will
Absolutely.
send me a message and we will discuss the possibility.
I'll
And
just send you a calendar invite the moment the call gets over. I think that would be
yeah,
best.
okay, for 1 year.
1 year, 2024. And I hope I have similar or like nicer things to say.
All right.
It's,
So let's say bye bye to the viewers now and hope to see you next year. Till then, bye bye, everybody. I'll be back with another young person or an expert soon. Bye till then. Bye.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.